All right, it's graduation season. Have you been to a graduation recently? That pomp and circumstance song, that always gets me every time. I had a nephew graduate from college. I had my son graduate from high school. It's so much fun. And then the reality kicks in. What are they going to do? You know, especially those college graduates. What are they going to do in the real world? How are they going to manage certain things? It's going to be one of those sink or swim type situations, especially when it comes to money sense and financial planning. Let's bring in Tammy Trenta. She is the founder and CEO of Family Financial. We've had her on the digital desk before. Tammy, it's good to see you. Let's talk about what college grads need to do first and foremost. And I have a feeling it revolves around having a budget, right?
Absolutely. So this is such an exciting time. It's a time where you're truly on your own and you are getting your first job. And it can be a little bit tricky, but I think today's college graduates have a lot more opportunity than maybe I did, way back when I graduated college. And I wish I knew these things back then, but I would say the first thing to do is get your job and also be aware of the cost of living where you are moving to, if you are in fact moving. Now, I think Tennessee is a great state because there isn't any state income tax. But if you move to California, you might be hit with a pretty hefty state tax. So when you're interviewing, consider the impact of where you will be living and the impact of any state income tax that might impact your take home. Once you have your salary, you should back into your budget. And I think that's tricky. Lots of graduates move to a city, get a place to live, and then find a job. And so you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're barely able to get by. So if you know what your take-home pay is going to be, it's easier to back into your budget.
So true. And you see that so many times. They're not really sure, okay, well, they get their first payday and they're like, oh man, this is great. Let's go. We're going out tonight, when in actuality you gotta budget everything. I mean, the budget is so critical and important. I guess you just gotta figure out that cost of living calendar, like you said, or calculator, just to kind of understand what you're going to be paying for when it comes to utility bills, phone bills, rent, that sort of thing. Anything else when it comes to that budget?
Yes. So a great rule of thumb to use once you know what your take-home pay will be is the 50-30-20 rule. And 50-30-20 rule is that you want to allocate no more of your budget to your essential needs. So that could be housing, that could be transportation, that could be groceries. And then the 30% you want to allocate to your wants. So that could be entertainment, travel, clothing, and you don't want to exceed the 30%. And then lastly, but most importantly, you want to have 20% allocated to savings. And I call that the pay yourself fund. If your company that you begin working for offers a 401k, take advantage of that. That could be a great benefit, especially if the company is offering a matching contribution. There's a lot of new state or Secure Act rules that came out last year that make it very advantageous for you to start saving for yourself at a younger age. Last thing I'll say is you want to prioritize the savings first. So it's almost like you go to the gym. When you go to the gym in the beginning of the day, you don't get, your day doesn't get away from you, and you don't end up not going to the gym because it's at the end of the day and you're tired. If you pay yourself first, then you don't have to worry about your needs and your wants eating up all your budget and leaving you no money for savings.
Very interesting point, and I love the 50-30-20 rule. That's a good rule to always have. Let's talk about paying off debts, because I know that a lot of graduates will have some debts that they've accrued, not only student loan debt, but also credit card debt.
Yes. I know when I graduated from college, I had some credit card debt. And that's really the first thing that you want to tackle. You should make a list and prioritize what you're paying off by the interest rate that you're paying. So oftentimes credit cards have high interest rates. Now they're in the 20s and 30s. So those are the things you want to start paying off first. Student loans, sometimes there's a forbearance period. There's, other than forgiveness, it's just something that you'll have to budget for and pay over time. So prioritizing based on interest rate is really important. And if you're living within your budget, you shouldn't get into credit card debt. So, you've got a clean slate, you've got income coming in, pay your bills at the end of the month, make sure that you don't let the credit cards get away from you.
That's a tough one because with inflation the way it is, and you see it, I mean, you're in finances. I mean, inflation is still very high, and these college graduates are coming out. They're trying to, make a start on their own and in the real world, air quotes there. And so, here they are, they're trying to live within a budget, but, people are getting married and they're going in weddings and they're, becoming, best man and maid of honor, that sort of thing. So I would think that'd be pretty difficult to do, especially when it comes to also building an emergency fund, because that, in theory is a great idea, but how do we make that really come to fruition?
Well, you mentioned two things. One is the weddings and the travel and all of those expenses that can definitely add up. And that can be the 30% that you allocate to your wants. So if you end up exceeding that 30%, you've got to figure out ways to maybe pare that back, or maybe you don't attend a wedding or you have to forego something else. But foregoing the savings is really tough. When you're first starting out, I think one of the risks is that, oftentimes you're working for someone else, and, in a time where we're teetering on a recession, you don't know. You might be the first one to be let go. And if you've already gotten your apartment and got yourself established, it's a little risky. So you want to have 3 to 6 months of emergency fund, and perhaps that 20% you start to accumulate. You can, once you hit that 3 months or 6 months, whatever works for you, you can start. And once you pay off your credit card debt, you start moving on to getting long-term investments. So, it's all a process. So high interest debt, then emergency savings, then start looking at your 401k and other ways to invest.
The other point here, Tammy, is such a good one. Establishing good credit. I mean, oh my gosh, that affects so much of our lives these days. What's the best way college graduates can establish good credit?
So a great way to establish credit is to use your credit cards, but pay them off. When you're applying for a car loan or even a home, they will pull your credit score and they'll look at your credit history. And it really depends when you start to establish credit. So if you get your first credit card when you're 18, now you're having to be responsible for yourself. So your credit rating will by default be lower because you are younger and you are establishing credit. Sometimes parents will give their child a credit card so they can start building credit in their own name. But being responsible, paying it off. If you are in the direst of situations, just don't keep more than 25% of a balance against your credit line. That's what the creditors are really looking for, your ability to pay your bills on time and manage your credit.
Okay, and you mentioned this briefly off the top, is about investing in the future, or as you said, investing in yourself. I have a financial planner, but I didn't when I was in college. I guess it's just one of those things where usually most companies have some sort of 401k or retirement plan. And college graduates should start that right away. I mean, everything I've seen says if you start in your 20s, you'll be exponentially better off by the time you're, in your 60s.
I mean, you could technically be a millionaire by the time you're 40 if you start diligently saving that 20% when you're in your 20s. Now, no one told me that. I had to learn it over time, but I can't tell you how many 40-year-olds who have not prioritized savings come to me and really regret not getting off on the right foot when they're young. So if your company offers you that 401k, I know when I sat down, I'm like, what? I can't touch that until I'm 59 and a half? I want to enjoy my life. This doesn't seem like a good idea at all. Trust me, put some in as much as you're able to, because that, think of it like that money that you're saving are like little mini employees, and those little mini employees need to earn money for you so that someday that money grows and compounds, and it's going to be able to pay you to live a lifestyle without being forced to work. Another thing I'll say that is different is we're in a time of the side hustle. And so you might have a day job and there's something that you could be doing on the side if you feel like the cost of living where you are is a little bit in excess of what you're bringing in. So there are opportunities while you're young, while you have the energy to just kind of knock it out of the park, before it's too late.
Yeah, I mean, side hustles are very popular these days. Final thing before we let you go, what's your best advice to combat this raging inflation? I mean, should we just, invest more money?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, we all see it everywhere. And when you're just starting off, one thing that I don't know that people consider is we have had tremendous amount of wage growth over the last few years. And so that wage growth is the reason for inflation going up. So on a relative basis, it may seem like people who are on a fixed salary that have experienced inflation definitely feel the pinch. But starting salaries overall should be higher than they were a few years ago to combat inflation. If you're lucky enough, I mean, I know a lot of tech companies have moved out of the more expensive cities, but there's also an opportunity to have remote jobs. So if you can get a California job and live in Tennessee, you might be able to take advantage of that cost of living. So, not all cities pay the same amount. So if you can use that, I like to call it income arbitrage, but working in a lower cost of living city where you have an opportunity to get a job that pays you more because of the city that they're in.
Tammy, it's always been good to talk to you on these things. Where can people go to get some more information on this, perhaps online?
Sure. Well, I'm on LinkedIn, and familyfinancial.biz is our company's website. We're a financial planning firm, and we do articles regularly on these types of things.
Okay, Tammy Trenta, appreciate it. Founder and CEO of Family Financial. Thanks again so much for taking the time. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Andrew.